This episode of Techno Buffalo is brought to you by Ting, mobile that makes sense. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the episode of Rettinger's Riffs, the show where I talk about anything that's going on in the world of technology and sometimes a little bit outside. This episode is being filmed entirely on an iPhone 6 Plus. Audio, though, is going into our Canon C100. It will be color graded, but the camera that's being used, again, is the 6 Plus. And speaking of the 6 Plus, the sole topic of this video is, would the 6 Plus exist if it wasn't for Samsung? Let's go ahead and get started. The story of Apple and Samsung is a long storied one. Samsung was a component maker of Apple and they were friends and all was right with the world. Then Samsung started getting a little more serious about phones. They started making different phones, bigger phones, and they became a little bit of the frenemies, so to speak. Although I would like to argue that Apple and Samsung have benefited because of each other. Before everybody gets all upset at me with Android and iOS wars, let me just explain myself a little bit. First, I can pretty much unequivocally say the 6 Plus wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Galaxy Note line of phones. Let's flash back real quickly to 2011, where at IFA, Samsung got on stage and introduced a 5.3-inch phone, which at the time was ridiculous. The iPhone 4S was the Apple phone that was out with a 3.5-inch screen. So you're going from 3.5 to 5.3 is a gigantic jump. I remember being there at the press event for the Galaxy Note and thinking, who's gonna use a phone this big? Then I played with it. Then I put it in my pocket and saw that it fit, and I was like, I could definitely use a phone this big. And I remember using it. And at the time, there's been famous quotes from Steve Jobs that have said, nobody would use a big phone. Phones should only be as big as your thumb can reach, all that kind of stuff. But things change. Times change, opinions change. What you said something at one point isn't always what your thoughts are going to be years and years later. So, Apple would have gone to bigger phones anyway. The industry was just going that way. I think we would have seen the 4.7-inch phone that we have right now. But the Galaxy Note line really ushered in the larger screen phones. And look what we have now in the marketplace. You got the 5.5-inch G3, you got the OnePlus One at 5.5. You've got just larger devices that are becoming mainstream. They're becoming accepted. You look at what Dell had a few years back with the Dell Streak. That was really the first giant phone. I was met with just a gasp from people thinking, what is this thing? It's an abomination. I used it, and even at the time it felt too big for me, and now it looks almost small by today's standards. So Samsung definitely pushed the industry forward, and Apple and Samsung definitely need each other. So first, Samsung lost the case. They used Apple's R&D. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, they did. But what they did from a business standpoint was very interesting. Apple spent millions and millions and millions, and probably billions, on R&D that led to the initial iPhone, everything that came after it, iPhone 3G, 3GS, 4, 4S, 5, and sort of all the way on up. Just tons and tons of money. And Apple had to offset that cost, and that went to the consumer and the cost of devices. That's why Apple devices are expensive. You probably got a mobile phone in your pocket, and you're also probably overpaying for it. Let me tell you about Ting. With Ting, you aren't forced to pick a plan based on what you think you're going to use each month. You actually pick what you actually use each month, which means there's way less waste. You simply pay for the service that you're going to use. You can leave the service whenever you want with no fees at all. There aren't any hidden admin fees or weird, sketchy charges you don't know what they mean, like random surcharges. Ting bills are simple to understand, and they only charge you for your usage plus $6 per device plus taxes depending on where you are. At the end of the day, we're just overpaying for our cell phones. Look at your next cell phone bill, I challenge you, and see if you can understand every single line item you are charged for. It is impossible to understand, and you try and call and get an answer, and you're sort of stuck on an endless loop of transfers and automated lady telling you to press 4. If you're ready to get started, use promo code at technobuffalo.ting.com and save $25 on your device purchase, or get $25 in Ting service credit towards your monthly bill. Give it a shot, you won't regret it. Samsung took that R&D, or at least a large portion of the R&D, and this has been sort of determined by courts, and they put it into their phones. They didn't have to spend the millions and millions and millions and millions and possibly billions of dollars for R&D, so they were able to make their phones less expensive, which means they're able to innovate, I think, a little bit quicker than the competition. So they took touchscreen technology, they took on-screen keyboard algorithms, they took a lot of things that Apple had and put into the device. It sort of made them great and made them sort of have a much faster adoption than really we'd seen in any other manufacturer before. Samsung had to pay a huge fine, but that fine still paled in comparison to they would have had to pay if they did their own R&D. Doing their own R&D would have put their phones back years and years and years. So those two companies have needed each other to get where they're at. And I think you can only strive for greatness when you're forced to compete. And I think competition is great for the consumers. Taking aside the argument of iOS or Android, and on a side note, why should someone's choice of phones define who they are, and why should you care what phone somebody else has? That's just a side sort of riffy note there. But I want to unequivocally say that we would not have a phone as large as the 6 Plus if it wasn't for Samsung. It makes me wonder if Steve Jobs is still running Apple. Would he reverse his stance in saying that nobody wants big phones? Would he have said, okay, I see the industry's changing, let's adapt to change with it? I really would have been very curious to see what happened. And aside from that, would he have approved that camera hump on the 6 and the 6 Plus? I don't know. But I will say, and I'm going the record to say, that Samsung was the reason we have big phones right now. Whether it's Apple, whether it's LG or anyone else, we can thank Samsung for that, whether you're a Samsung fan or not. They push the industry forward. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. It was just sort of rattling around in my mind, stream of consciousness kind of video. Until next time, I'm John Rettinger from Techno Buffalo. See you guys next video. Bye-bye. Go to technobuffalo.ting.com to see how much you'll save. Ting, mobile that makes sense. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. We love making tech videos here, and if you like watching them, be sure to hit the giant subscribe button so you know exactly what's happening in the world of technology. And if you like gaming and you want to see us play some games, albeit sometimes kind of badly, check out our new Twitch channel at twitch.tv/technobuffalo.